Hanging judge ordered a death. Until the widow spoke his forbidden name in court, the desert wind didn't howl that morning. It whispered. A dry, rasping breath slipping through the cracks of Redemption Creek's crooked courthouse, stirring dust across the warped floorboards, lifting the hems of black mourning dresses, brushing the sweat-beaded temples of men who came to watch a boy die for bread. Judge Elias Crow sat high on his bench like a vulture on a fence post, shoulders squared, jaw locked, eyes like flint. He hadn't blinked since the verdict. Not when the jury foreman cleared his throat and muttered, "Guilty." Not when the sheriff shifted his weight and fingered the coil of hemp beside the door. Not even when young Tom Mercer, 17, sunburned, ribs showing through his torn shirt, let out a whimper so soft it might have been the wind, if the wind could break a man's heart. The gavel in Elias's hand was old. Carved from mesquite, dark with years of slammed justice. He'd used it to condemn horse thieves, murderers, men who shot first and asked questions never. He'd never hesitated. Never lost sleep. The law was the law. And in Redemption Creek, where the soil was too dry for crops and too rich for graves, the rope was cheaper than prison. Sentence is death by hanging, Elias intoned, voice like gravel dragged over iron. At high noon tomorrow. Sheriff, see it done. A murmur rippled through the room, not outrage, not pity. Satisfaction. The kind that comes when order is restored, when the wild is tamed, when a hungry dog is put down before it bites. The sheriff nodded, already picturing the knot, the drop, the snap. Tom Mercer didn't cry. Just stared at his boots, one sole flapping, the other stained with mud and something darker. Blood, maybe. Or just the dust that never left this town. He opened his mouth, to beg. To scream. To say his sister's name. He never got the chance. Because that's when she walked in. Black dress. Black veil. Black gloves clutching a worn leather satchel. Eleanor Vance moved like a shadow given bones, slow, silent, deliberate. The crowd parted without thinking, as if her grief carried its own gravity. She didn't look at Tom. Didn't look at the sheriff. Didn't even glance at the noose coiled like a snake by the door. She looked only at the judge. And when she reached the foot of the bench, she lifted her veil. Eyes red-rimmed but dry. Lips cracked from wind and weeping. Cheeks hollow, as if grief had scooped her out and left only the shell. The room stilled. Even the flies quit buzzing. Eleanor took one breath. Then another. And when she spoke, her voice didn't shake. It shattered. Silas Crow. The name hit the air like a bullet. Men stiffened. Women gasped and pulled children close. The sheriff's hand flew to his holster, not for danger, but for comfort. As if steel could shield them from memory. Judge Elias Crow. He didn't move. Didn't breathe. The gavel in his fist trembled, just once, before a hairline fracture split up the handle. A tiny sound. A whisper of wood giving way. But in that silent room, it roared like thunder. 3 days before the gavel cracked, Tom Mercer crept through the alley behind Henderson's general store like a fox with a broken leg, quiet, desperate, ribs heaving with every shallow breath. His boots, one sole flapping, made no sound on the hard-packed dirt. His hands, blistered from hauling water and splitting wood for folks who paid in glances and silence, trembled not from fear, but from hunger. The smell hit him first. Warm bread. Fresh. Crust crackling as it cooled on the sill. His stomach growled so loud he froze, pressing himself against the sun-baked adobe wall, heart hammering like a trapped bird. He hadn't eaten since yesterday's scrap, half a biscuit soaked in creek water, shared with Liza. His little sister. 10 years old. Coughing so hard at night he thought her lungs might tear loose. She was back at the shack, what was left of it, curled under a threadbare quilt that smelled of dust and sickness. Their pa's grave marker was a crooked plank with J. Mercer carved by a pocketknife. Died 6 months back when the bank took the land, the cattle, the future. Left Tom with nothing but a mule too old to plow and a sister too sick to walk. The bread sat alone. Unwatched. Just beyond the open window. One loaf. Slightly burnt on one end. Probably meant for the trash. Or the dogs. Tom didn't think. Didn't pray. Just moved. Fingers brushed warm crust. He snatched it, quick, silent, and tucked it under his shirt. The heat seared his skin. He turned to run. And ran straight into Jed Henderson. The store owner stood there like a bull in a doorway, arms crossed, apron stained with coffee and grease, eyes narrowed to slits. He didn't shout. Didn't grab Tom by the collar. Just looked down, slow, cold, and said, "Boy, you just signed your own death warrant." Tom didn't beg. Didn't explain about Liza's fever, the rattling in her chest, the way she whispered, "Tom, I'm so hungry," before drifting into fitful sleep. He just stood there, the stolen bread burning against his ribs like a brand, eyes locked on the dirt between his boots. Henderson didn't call the sheriff right away. He made Tom wait. Made him stand in the sun outside the store while folks passed by, some spitting, some shaking their heads, one old woman crossing herself like he was already a ghost. By the time the law arrived, sweat had soaked Tom's shirt, the bread had gone cold, and his legs felt like sand. Sheriff Cobb was a big man with a voice like gravel in a tin cup. He didn't cuff Tom. Didn't need to. Just gripped his shoulder, hard enough to bruise, and said, "Judge'll see you tomorrow. Don't run. Ain't nowhere to go but the rope." That night, Tom sat beside Liza in the dark. He broke the bread in half, the good half for her, the burnt end for himself. She ate slow, eyes closed, tears slipping down her cheeks not from sadness, but relief. "Tastes like Ma's," she whispered. Tom didn't tell her about the courthouse. Didn't tell her about the sheriff's grip or the crowd's stares. He just stroked her hair, thin as prairie grass, and hummed the lullaby their mother used to sing, the one about doves and rivers and home. Outside, coyotes howled. Closer than usual. He didn't sleep. Just watched the moon crawl across the ceiling, counting the beams, counting her breaths, counting the hours till morning. At dawn, he washed his face in the tin basin, pulled on his only clean shirt, faded blue, 2 buttons missing, and tucked Liza's half-eaten crust into his pocket. For later, he told her, voice rough. She nodded, too weak to speak. He kissed her forehead. Smelled the sickness on her breath, sour, thick. Felt the heat of her skin. Then he walked out into the sun. And didn't look back. Eleanor Vance didn't raise her voice. Didn't point. Didn't weep. She just stood there, small, veiled, trembling not from fear but from the weight of 20 years coiled tight in her throat, and let the name hang in the thick, whiskey-sour air of the courthouse. Silas Crow. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't cursed. It was offered, quiet, deliberate, like laying a body down for burial. And the room? It didn't gasp. It didn't scream. It froze. Like a man caught mid-step on thin ice. Like a bird shot in mid-flight. The cigar smoke hung motionless. The flies forgot to buzz. Even the dust motes seemed to pause in their lazy dance through the sunbeams slicing through the high windows. Because everyone knew the name. Silas Crow. The judge's brother. The town's shame. The ghost Redemption Creek pretended didn't exist. He'd been handsome once, wild-eyed, quick with a joke and quicker with a pistol. Ran horses. Gambled hard. Drank harder. Loved harder still. Fell for Eleanor when she was just a preacher's daughter with ink-stained fingers and dreams bigger than the desert. They'd met behind the church, shared stolen kisses under the cottonwoods, planned a life beyond the dust and the drought. Then came the night at the Lucky Star Saloon. Cards. Whiskey. A bet gone wrong. A deputy named Harlan Pike, cocky, cruel, the kind of lawman who enjoyed breaking bones, accused Silas of cheating. Called him a liar. Called Eleanor worse. Silas didn't draw first. But he drew fastest. One shot. Center chest. Pike dropped like a sack of grain. And Silas? He ran. Not far. Not fast. Just, away. Into the Badlands. Into the bottle. Into the kind of darkness that swallows men whole. Elias Crow, then just a deputy himself, was the one who found him. 3 weeks later. Huddled in a cave, fever burning through him, beard matted with blood and vomit, begging for water, for mercy, for his brother's forgiveness. I didn't mean to kill him, Eli, he'd rasped, clutching Elias's sleeve with skeletal fingers. It was the drink. The rage. I'm sorry. Please, don't turn me in. Elias had looked down at his brother, the boy who taught him to shoot, to ride, to laugh, and felt nothing but shame. He cuffed him. Dragged him back. Presented him to the court like a trophy. And when the sentence came, death by hanging, Elias didn't flinch. He watched the trapdoor drop. He heard the snap. He never spoke Silas's name again. Until now. Eleanor stepped forward, veil still lifted, eyes locked on the judge. He begged you to, she said, voice low but carrying to every corner of that silent room. On his knees. Just like this boy. Just like Tom Mercer. You looked him in the eye, and handed him to the rope. A murmur rippled through the crowd, uneasy, guilty, afraid. Men shifted. Women clutched their children tighter. The sheriff's hand twitched toward his pistol, not to shoot, but to steady himself. Judge Crow didn't move. Didn't blink. The broken gavel lay in his lap now, split clean down the middle. His knuckles were white. His breath came shallow, ragged, the breath of a man drowning in memory. You buried him in an unmarked grave, Eleanor continued, stepping closer to the bench. No stone. No prayer. Just dust and silence. I was there. I held his hand when the fever took him, after the hanging failed. Did you know that? He lived 3 more days. In agony. Whispering your name. Begging me to find you. To tell you, he forgave you. Elias's throat worked. A muscle jumped in his jaw. His eyes, hard as flint for 20 years, glistened. Not with tears. With something worse. Recognition. Because Tom Mercer wasn't just some thief. He was Silas. Same sunken cheeks. Same desperate eyes. Same trembling hands clutching at mercy like a drowning man clutching rope. The courtroom held its breath. Eleanor reached into her satchel. Slow. Deliberate. And pulled out a small, faded photograph, creased, sun-bleached, but unmistakable. 2 boys. One grinning, arms slung around the other's shoulders. Elias. Silas. Young. Happy. Before the law. Before the rope. Before the silence. She held it up. Look at him, she whispered. Really look. Elias didn't reach for it. Didn't need to. He saw it. Saw him. Saw the ghost he'd spent 2 decades running from, now standing before him in ragged clothes and blistered skin. The courtroom held its breath. Elias finally moved. Not to speak. Not to strike. He stood. Slow. Stiff. Like an old man rising from a long sickness. He looked down at Tom Mercer, still bound, still silent, eyes wide with confusion and dawning hope. Then he looked at Eleanor. And for the first time in 20 years, he spoke his brother's name. Silas, he breathed. Barely audible. But it echoed like thunder in that silent room. And with it, something broke. High noon came like a curse. The sun didn't blaze, it pressed down, heavy and white-hot, baking the wooden gallows until the planks groaned. Dust devils spun lazy circles in the street. Flies buzzed thick around the water trough, drunk on heat and neglect. The crowd had gathered early, not with bloodlust now, but with unease. Whispers slithered through the ranks like snakes in dry grass. Did you hear what she said? Silas Crow. The judge's brother? They say he's still out there, haunting him. Tom Mercer stood at the foot of the gallows, wrists bound, shirt soaked through with sweat. He didn't look at the rope. Didn't look at the trapdoor. He looked at Eleanor, still veiled now, standing apart from the crowd, gloved hands folded, face unreadable. She gave him the smallest nod. Not comfort. Not promise. Just presence. I'm here. You're not alone. Sheriff Cobb fumbled with the noose. His fingers, usually steady as a surgeon's, trembled. The hemp was rough, dry, smelling of tar and thyme. He looped it twice, too loose, then too tight, muttering under his breath, "Damn heat, damn dust, damn woman and her damn name." The deputy beside him shifted his weight. "You want me to do it, Sheriff?" Cobb shook his head. "Ain't about who ties the knot. It's about who gives the word." And the word hadn't come. Judge Crow hadn't left his house all morning. The townsfolk waited. The sun climbed. The noose swayed, not from wind, but from the sheriff's shaking hands. Then, a creak. The courthouse door opened. Elias Crow stepped out. No robe. No gavel. Just a plain black suit, dusty at the hem, collar unbuttoned. He looked older. Not in years, in weight. As if the night had piled stones on his shoulders. His eyes, once sharp as a hawk's, were shadowed, hollow. He walked slow. Deliberate. Past the saloon. Past the general store. Past the men who tipped their hats and looked away. He didn't head for the bench set up beneath the gallows. He headed for Tom. The crowd parted like water before a stone. Elias stopped 3 feet from the boy. Looked him up and down, the sunburnt neck, the cracked lips, the hollows beneath his eyes that spoke of nights spent hungry, afraid, alone. Then he turned to the sheriff. "Untie him." Cobb blinked. "Judge, the sentence, untie him," Elias repeated. Voice low. Not loud. Not angry. Just, final. The sheriff hesitated. Glanced at the crowd. At the noose. At the deputy, who gave the barest shake of his head. Elias didn't wait. He stepped forward, slow, stiff, and reached for the ropes himself. His fingers brushed Tom's wrists. Cold. Dry. Shaking. The boy flinched. Elias paused. Looked into his eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered. So quiet only Tom could hear. For all of it. Then he undid the knots. 1. 2. 3. The ropes fell to the dust. Tom didn't run. Didn't speak. Just stood there, rubbing his wrists, staring at the man who'd condemned him, and now freed him. A murmur rose from the crowd, confused, angry, afraid. "What's this mean, Judge?" called a voice from the back. Elias didn't answer. Didn't turn. Just reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a canteen, old, dented, leather strap cracked with age. He uncorked it. Handed it to Tom. Drink. The boy did. Slowly. Water spilled down his chin, darkening his shirt. He coughed. Swallowed. Drank again. Elias watched. Then turned to Eleanor. She hadn't moved. Hadn't spoken. Just watched him with eyes that knew too much. He walked to her. Stopped an arm's length away. You were there, he said. At the end. With him. She nodded. He called for you. Every hour. Every breath. Elias closed his eyes. A long moment. Then, where is he buried? West Canyon. Beneath the lone juniper. No marker. Just stones stacked high. He opened his eyes. Nodded once. Thank you. Then he turned back to the crowd, faces now twisted with confusion, anger, betrayal. I revoke the sentence, he announced, voice stronger now. By the authority vested in me, and by the mercy I failed to show once before. Gasps. Shouts. A man threw his hat to the dust. You can't do that, yelled Jed Henderson, face purple. He stole. The law is not God, Elias cut in, voice like iron wrapped in velvet. And I am not its prophet. I am its servant. And today, I serve mercy. He turned back to Tom. Go with her, he said, nodding to Eleanor. Take the mule. Take what's left of your home. Go north. Don't come back. Tom looked at Eleanor. She nodded. He looked at Elias. And for the first time, the boy spoke. Why? Elias didn't answer right away. He looked past Tom, past the gallows, past the town, toward the Badlands, where the wind howled and the ghosts walked. Because someone should have said it to him, he whispered. And no one did. Then he turned. And walked away. Not toward the courthouse. Not toward his home. Toward the stables. Toward his horse. Toward the West Canyon. Toward the grave. Elias Crow didn't pack much. Didn't need to. A canteen. A blanket. A rusted shovel strapped to his saddle. And the photograph, creased, sun-bleached, two boys grinning like the world hadn't yet learned how to break them. He tucked it inside his shirt, over his heart. Where Silas's bullet hadn't gone, but his silence had. He left at dusk. No fanfare. No farewell. Just the creak of leather, the soft snort of his mare, Dusty, and the crunch of hooves on gravel as he passed the edge of town. No one came to stop him. No one came to send him off. The saloon piano stayed silent. The church bell didn't chime. Even the dogs didn't bark. Redemption Creek held its breath as its judge rode out, not in triumph, not in exile, but in penance. The desert welcomed him like an old enemy. Wind scoured his face. Dust coated his lips. The sun, even sinking, still burned. He didn't hurry. Didn't push Dusty into a gallop. He let her pick her way through the arroyos and sagebrush, following the ghost of a trail only memory could map. He knew where he was going. Knew it in his bones. Knew it in the hollow behind his ribs where his brother's laughter used to live. He reached the canyon just past midnight. Moonlight silvered the rocks. Shadows pooled deep in the gullies. Crickets sang. Coyotes yipped far off, not hunting, just talking. Keeping watch. He dismounted stiffly. Tethered Dusty to a juniper. Pulled the shovel from his saddle. And walked. 20 paces. 30. Then he saw it. The lone juniper, gnarled, half-dead, branches twisted like arthritic fingers clawing at the sky. Beneath it, a mound. Low. Unmarked. Just stones, river rock, stacked careful, lovingly, by hands that had known grief too deep for words. Eleanor's hands. He stopped. Didn't kneel. Didn't speak. Just stood there, breathing hard, the shovel heavy in his grip. Then, slowly, he drove it into the earth. Not to dig up. To dig down. To be closer. The dirt was hard. Dry. Unforgiving. Each shovelful scraped his palms raw. Sweat stung his eyes. His back screamed. He didn't stop. Didn't rest. Just dug, deeper, deeper, until his boots were buried to the ankle and the hole was wide enough to hold a man. He dropped the shovel. Sat on the edge. Looked down into the dark. Silas, he whispered. The wind didn't answer. The stars didn't blink. I'm sorry. Still nothing. He pulled the photograph from his shirt. Looked at it, at the boy with the crooked grin, the wild eyes, the arms slung proud around his little brother's shoulders. I should have listened, Elias said, voice cracking like dry timber. Should have lied. Should have run with you. Should have taken the blame. Anything, anything but hand you over to them. To the rope. He swallowed. Throat raw. You begged me. On your knees. I remember. I remember every word. Every tear. And I looked at you like you were a stranger. Like you were already dead. He closed his eyes. I thought justice was clean. Simple. Black and white. Guilty or innocent. Rope or release. I didn't know. I didn't want to know, that mercy is the harder sentence. A tear slipped free. First in 20 years. It hit the dirt. Vanished. I sentenced a boy today. For stealing bread. Just like you, stole time. Stole chances. Stole your own life with a bottle and a bullet. I was going to hang him. Would've. If she hadn't spoken your name. He opened his eyes. Looked at the grave. I heard you in him, Silas. In his silence. In his sunken cheeks. In the way he looked at his sister, like you looked at me, that last night. Like I was the only thing left in the world worth saving. He took a shaky breath. I saved him. Finally. Too late for you. But not for him. He stood. Brushed the dirt from his knees. Looked up at the stars, cold, distant, endless. I'm staying, he said softly. Right here. Till the sun comes up. Till the coyotes stop singing. Till I feel something. Forgiveness. Maybe. Or just peace. He lay down beside the grave. Not on top. Beside it. Shoulder to shoulder with memory. Pulled the blanket over himself. Closed his eyes. And for the first time in 20 years, he slept without dreaming of ropes. Back in Redemption Creek, Tom and Liza were gone by dawn. Eleanor helped them pack what little they had, a sack of beans, a tin cup, Tom's father's old coat, Liza's doll with the yarn hair. They took the mule. Headed north, like the judge said. Toward rumors of green valleys and kind strangers. Tom didn't look back. Liza waved once, not at the town, but at Eleanor. The widow stood in the road long after they vanished into the shimmering heat. Then she walked to the gallows. The noose still hung. She cut it down. Buried it. Years later, travelers spoke of an old man seen near the northern passes, white-bearded, gentle-eyed, handing bread to hungry children, never speaking his name. Some said he was a preacher. Others, a ghost. A few, a judge who'd finally learned the weight of mercy. In Redemption Creek, they tore down the gallows. Turned the courthouse into a school. Planted cottonwoods where the rope once swayed. And on quiet nights, when the wind sighs just right through the canyon west of town, folks say you can still hear two voices, one young, one old, whispering the same word. Forgiven. The rope is gone. The gavel is dust. But the mercy? That's still riding.